Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe and the comics, TV, and movies. We will go from Earth 616 to Mojoverse to the Skrullos in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
Alliance
Assemble.
Assemble, Volume 170. And man, what a second episode of Secret Invasion.
There was several. I really enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed this episode. Well, we'll get there, but I was thoroughly pleased by this one.
So, how was your week, Brent?
You know, nothing too exciting this week. So
Absolutely nothing.
I've got a little family vacation this week. That's right. Absolutely nothing happened this week. Got a little family vacation next week. That's going to happen. So looking forward to that. Yeah, I guess spoilers. I won't be on the show next week, but you got someone. You got someone lined up for that.
We do. We have someone lined up, so we will be covered for episode 3 and whatever news drops. So yeah, this week, light week. Kind of was out of the office all last week at professional development, so back in the office trying to do a little bit of hiring for the summer. Just nothing big going on, so can't really say. Just normal good summer week. So
that works.
But all right, let us get into this right now. So let's get all the network paperwork out of the way. So we are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance network with 8 shows covering the wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance network on Twitter at GWAPod Network so you know when all the shows drop. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we've got 2 tiers. We've got our $1 tier, our tip jar to say, hey, you think we're doing a good job? And then we've got our $5 tier with ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon exclusive shows, including our show. We can watch this all day, the Marvel Alliance MCU rewatch. We just dropped our 18th episode, which is covering one of Brent's favorites,
Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yes, so good timing for that at that point. So patrons, we hope you're enjoying that, including some of the content from the DC Alliance guys who are doing the DC films through the years. We've got Joe getting ready to drop a whole bunch of his summer watches from back in the day, and hope you're enjoying that back catalog. Again, patrons, we want to thank you. We can't do this without your support. But if you haven't joined us on Patreon, go to www.patreon.com/GUA network. But if you can't join us on Patreon, we totally understand. But if you can take 30 to 90 seconds, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and all the other lovely podcatchers that you can. And last but certainly not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, for your omnibus hardcover collected edition needs. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with excellent customer service, immaculate packaging, ships around the world. We've got here our new final order pre-order is coming up. We've got Spider-Man, Ben Reilly Omnibus Volume 2 coming back into reprint. Let's see. We've got this was a couple months ago, was announced, and it was a big surprise because Thor by JMS was coming back into print, but they decided to do one better with that, not just by JMS, but also Kieran Gillen Omnibus. So it'll be combined, a 1-2 punch for the return of Thor. And this was another big one. Marvel has reacquired the license for ROM. So the famous ROM Space Knight is coming back in its very first omnibus with 3 covers. Get it? Who knows how long they'll have that license for, but use that code MARVELGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. I want to thank them for being our official sponsor. All right. Well, and Joe in the chat saying 2 episodes for patrons dropping tomorrow of his summer watches. So get ready for that, patrons. All right, so we kind of said it at the beginning of the episode, but yeah, second episode of Secret Invasion was definitely, the first one was good. This one was, I could easily tell why they gave the streamers these 2 episodes.
Yeah, I agree. This ends on quite the cliffhanger for me, but the 2 together flow really, really nicely.
Mm-hmm. No, it does. There were basically like 3 acts in this whole single episode, and I think every single act had a really solid moment and just got me ready. If it can keep this level throughout the rest of the remaining 4 episodes, I think this is definitely going to rise up to a lot of people's top 3 of Disney shows on for the MCU.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I feel like I can say 2 things in a non-spoiler sense that will basically say what I thought of the episode overall. One, so far, 2 episodes in, this show feels like a Marvel spin on the Jack Ryan show on Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good thing. I really enjoy the Jack Ryan show on Amazon Prime.
Which
So
the final season is dropping tomorrow or today if you're listening to this.
yeah, and don't tweet at me about it because I won't even start it probably for at least a week. But I really, really enjoy that show, and there are definite similarities there. The other thing, I don't even know if I've ever told you this before, but I really, really love Brian Michael Bendis's Marvel work. Let me specify his Marvel work. Specifically, what I refer to as his talking heads issues, where maybe there's an action scene, but it's in no way a real set point, like a centerpiece of the episode. And all the real, quote unquote action, if you will, takes place in talking, in conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And this episode had, to me, 3 pivotal scenes along that line.
Yes.
That really falls into that category. And I absolutely loved them. I thought they were fantastic.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely break down because those quiet moments, those talking to each other moments was definitely a really, really solid, some great stuff and some great backstories being told. So, all right, if you have not necessarily watched episode 2 yet, pause, watch it, come back to us because we're about to do the breakdown in full spoilers in 3, 2, 1. All right. So we open the episode. It was interesting how they did the previously on as basically a recap of the main parts of Captain Marvel. So so be it at that point. Nothing about the first episode much, but we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's weird, right? Because I like that they do that. Yes, acknowledge that the events of the movies are relevant to the show, and vice versa. Not that I'm asking for a previously on in the movies, but I like that they do that. It is a little weird to me. I mean, they did it because this movie opened up in the mid-90s, right? Like or 95, 97. It's a little weird, though, that they did it in front of episode 2 and not episode 1.
Yeah, definitely strange, but what have you. So they eventually opened the episode in 1997, so 2 years later, in Brixton, London, where Fury's meets Gravik as a child for the first time, and he's told by Clara, who we're going to see a little bit later towards the end of the episode, that his parents were killed in the Kree Skrull War and that he piloted a ship all by himself. Now, what's interesting is Fury dismisses the suggestion that he could be a good asset just simply because he's a child. And I love the response Clara gives him is that it's in human eyes because he is much older than he really looks as a Skrull.
Right, exactly.
But a little history lesson because, a lot of times some people, they make decisions on locations, places, just because it's just the way it is. But I have a feeling that the reason they chose Brixton is kind of for those that kind of know what's going on and what had happened in Brixton. And I don't believe it was chosen in random. And I want to give a shout out to the Heavy Spoilers podcast for breaking this down. But I thought this was really interesting. I knew some about it, but when he did his breakdown, I went into real depth on this one. So Brixton, there's been some big issues going on late, which is called the Windrush Scandal. In 1948, the HMT Empire Windrush brought several Jamaican civilians who settled in the area. In 1998, the Brixton Library was renamed Windrush Square to commemorate the 50 years of them bringing them to their new home in Britain. In 2018, a scandal began with many of those from Windrush generation being wrongly detained and denying them of their rights so that they could be deported. Even though the people had been over there for over 70 years, there were 83 cases where people were wrongly deported by the UK's Home Office. It had become a big scandal, and many higher-ups were forced to resign. So much like the Skrulls, the Jamaican migrants were promised compensation and aid once the policies got hit with backlash. But those promises, like Fury's, have never come to pass.
Yeah, and that fits like a really, really well with the theme of this episode because yes, it's absolutely a theme of the show in general, really, not just the episode. Fury broke his promise. He made a promise. He gave quite the back there, in 97, he says, you work with me, I'm going to work with you. Captain Marvel and I are going to work with you, and we're going to find you a planet. You have my word. I promise this is what's going to happen. He hasn't done it. 30 years
Yeah.
later, he hasn't done it. We'll give him a pass for the 5 years he was snapped. 25 years later, in his time, hasn't done it.
Mm-hmm. And one of the prophecies from the comics with the Skrulls after they lost Skrullos in the Kree Skull War in Galactus was that they would settle on a blue planet. And so Earth nicely fits that definition in the comics. However, right now, they see it as a refuge and able to integrate easily. And, Fury says, oh, you're going to work for me. I'm going to help you get, find a home world at that point. And it's interesting just because, like, Captain Marvel is not on Earth. We don't know what she's been doing necessarily. I don't know how much or how much she was looking for the Skrulls having a home world, even though she said they can't stay here. They need to find their own world. And I don't know how much Fury was helpful in finding them a home world necessarily either.
I've been thinking that a lot because you would think, really, especially at that time with the resources he had, Fury wouldn't be able to do jack squat to help find the Skrulls a home world.
Mm-hmm.
But what he could do is help them assimilate into Earth culture
Mm-hmm.
until they have that new world to go to. So really, a little bit of headcanon, but to me, it feels more like he's taking care of the Earth side, keeping them safe, keeping them comfortable until Carol finds a planet.
Yeah. But Talos bets big on Fury, and when he fails to deliver on the promise and disappears after 5 years, Talos kind of becomes the fall guy for those that turn against him.
When Talos is in human form, and the only people around are Fury and the Skrulls.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of a weird choice there, but
it is. And Talos' wife is the first one to take the pledge, and then the rest of the rooms follow suit. And I have to say, nothing like the wife taking the first step at that point, and the family of the representative of the group taking that first step, much like a politician. See, it's safe, guys. We can totally do this. My wife and kids are in it. Very political.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, we see the Skrull Warrior. We go back to present day, and the Skrull Warrior that was one of the bombers is taken by, looks like, Russian security, screaming, I'm an American, trying to basically make it known who he is, and right. Trying to start this whole war. Fury's tossed in another van, and by what we look like it's another Russian, but it ends up being revealed that it's Talos that's taking him away to get him out of there.
Do you think Fury knew that's who it was?
I don't know necessarily if Fury was even thinking to see who it was. I think he made the quick assumption that he was being taken by Russian security.
Because his reaction seemed like he was not wanting to go with them.
Yeah.
He almost seemed scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. His mind, he just saw Maria, his number one, his one would consider a best friend, Maria Hill, get killed in front of him. So, I mean, yeah, he's not in the right sense. Right. But after the opening credits, again, we cut to a train where Talos disguises himself as a woman, and when the Russians are looking for Fury, and uses his or her charm to get them to go away. And this is where our first of our, I think, one of our really solid one-on-one quiet discussions happens between Fury and Talos.
Yes.
And Fury has used this tactic before, where he talks about his past in order to get either people on his side or to get information out of them, much like in The Winter Soldier, talking about his grandfather being an elevator operator, and how the town changed, and that he ended up packing a loaded 45 as the area changed in order to have security, putting forth the new helicarriers and everything like that, Project Insight. Right. This one, he's talking about a game him and his mother played while on the train, while also talking about segregation and that they weren't allowed in certain cars. And one of his favorite games was Tell Me Something I Don't Know. And he says, he starts off by saying, tell me something I don't know about the destruction of Skrullos. And Taylor's like, you know everything. I've told you everything. And he's like, well, that's not the name of the game, is Tell Me Something I Don't Know. And what he reveals is that those who is not in the camp where Emperor Draga's colony is. That's the first name we've kind of heard of this at that point, but that about 1 million Skrulls have made it to Earth because Talos put out the call, and also this was during the blip as well. Fury wasn't around, and he needed to do something, so there's about 1 million Skrulls that have been inhabiting Earth, and Fury just says, "Are you out of your ever-loving reptilian mind?"
I love that he called him a reptile.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first of the three conversations that really did it for me in this week's episode. And just from the delivery of the story of him riding the trains with his mother as a child, to tell me something I don't know, to his reaction to finding out about the million, the anger at which he has. There's the people on this planet can't assimilate with each other. They're always at war. There's not room for 1 million more refugees from an alien world on this planet. In fact, I don't think there's room in this train car for the two of us right now. This looks like your stop. And after Talos leaves, the reaction, like, on Fury's face, like, he says it again, there's 1 million of them. It's borderline panic, not something we've really seen from Fury prior to this series.
Yeah, and he brings up the point saying, like, you knew how to get in touch with me, Talos. You knew how to tell me, like, something was going on. You chose not to tell me. And Talos throws it back in his face. Is like, when you came back, like, you couldn't even, like, your feet could barely touch the ground before you would go off to your space station. You haven't been here for, and he says years. That's what Talos says. He says years. And he says, yeah, I just want them. I just want us to coexist. I think we can integrate with y'all. And Fury just says, you're foolish to ever think that humans could coexist with an alien race, or that tolerance for a fact at that point. Like, it's, and as Aaron and I were watching it the other night, she after that line, she said, he's right. Sad but true. He's right.
I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with, right? Like, I can't argue with that at all.
Yeah. And this is where, I've been kind of pondering this idea, and I'm not saying I fully believe it, but proposing this theory out here that Talos could actually be one of the villains of the story, in the sense of, like I said earlier, he bet big on Fury, and Fury wasn't able to keep his promise. Talos has lost leadership in the Skrull Council. Has to saddle this whole idea of hiding. Over 1 million Skrulls have been in here, and he couldn't tell. Like, he's visibly angry. This is not the first time he's been angry with Fury. This is like the third or fourth time in this series he's been visibly upset and thrown it back in Fury's face. Like, it's something I've thought about. Again, I'm not necessarily saying I buy it, but it's something I'll put out into the ether.
Right. And I wonder if that's the case. I wonder if that's going to be one of the secrets. How does a Skrull hide amongst you when you know they're a Skrull? They're a double agent. Like, I can't rule that out.
Yeah. So we cut to Maria Hill's casket being loaded up onto the plane. At that point, we meet Maria Hill's mother, Elizabeth, for the very first time. In the comics, Fury went to Maria Hill when he discovered the Skrull invasion and told her to start using LMDs for her own protection. So just putting that out there. I'm not saying Maria Hill's alive. I'm just saying that's what happened in the comics, as we all know.
I was thinking about that. Like, I know, like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had some stuff with LMDs, but they really haven't done much with it, anything really in the movies. So it's definitely time. So the thing is, if it was truly an LMD who was killed, why did they do the funeral? Why did they why did Fury let Hill's mom think this? Are you just trying to sell it for the Skrulls? Maybe. I wonder why they're trying to do that, but I still, part of me was thinking earlier today, I was driving home from work and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I wonder if we're going to get more scenes with Hill, but flashbacks.
That's what I said last episode. I think I'm hoping for that, because even if we still get that and she really is dead, I still think that character has gotten a disservice in the MCU. I
mean, she's been just massively underused, right? Just across the board, every project she's been in, she has just been underused. And I don't think it's it's nothing against Robin Sparkles so much as it's just it's like they haven't known what to do with their character.
Yeah. But Fury tells Elizabeth the truth, kind of the truth about what happened, and she gets even more upset, saying she would have gone to hell and back at that point, and demands that do not let her death be in vain. Do not let it be for nothing at that point. Which we all know Fury's going to do everything possible to make sure he fulfills that promise. And then we cut to a bunch of news stories about
Can
the
I ask you a
bomb.
question about that?
Yeah.
If she's really dead, take it for face value, which in a show about shape-shifting aliens, okay, but just take it for face value, she's really dead. The scene with the mom basically is like a motivational thing to Fury. You better go get them. You better make up for this Avenger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was she fridged?
I've heard a lot about that, and I can't necessarily dispute that she wasn't, just because of the face value of what fridging is a death of a female character in order to motivate the male character for that. In a way, he was already motivated to seek out and end this invasion, or to find out what's been going on. This just gives him more motivation to do that, and even more personal. So on its face value, I can't deny that Maria Hill was fridged. It's a tough call, but again, I can't argue against it.
I wouldn't argue with someone against it who feels that way.
Yeah.
I did not think of that myself. Maybe that's just my bias as a man, but to me, fridging has always been more the supporting characters. I'm sure there's other examples, but she is technically a supporting character, but she's a supporting character that's been around for 10 years, right? Like 2012 with the Avengers, 10 years. That just to me feels like a bigger level of the character. And to my mind, anyone who's been around that long in the MCU is effectively on borrowed time. So yeah. I can't say I'm surprised. I'm still surprised it was in the first episode and not episode 5 or 6. I also can't. I won't argue with anyone who says she was fridged. It's just I saw a couple people talking about it online. Thought I'd bring it up.
No, like I said, it really did enter my mind as soon as I saw it happen. I said, I'm getting ready for the fridge conversation.
Yeah.
So we cut to some news organizations talk about the bombing. We see the NATO Security General, the UK Prime Minister, and we get the MCU's version of Fox News, FXN.
Yeah.
So it's, and then we cut to seeing Gravik going to actually go meeting of the council with Gaia driving him there, and he goes in, and she's trying to go in too, and it's like the security's like, no, you can't go in, and Gravik gives her a gun, saying, if I'm not out in an hour, you can shoot him in the head.
Yep. Shoot him in the head.
And so when Gravik goes in, we see a number of people that we just literally saw that now we know are Skrulls. We see the NATO Security General is a Skrull. The UK Prime Minister is a Skrull. The FXN host is a Skrull. Though the Skrulls are here long enough that they have now found themselves and taken over in positions of power. And the question is, how long have they been here? Did they, I'm not going to buy like it's always they've replaced, but some of them they may have replaced, and some of them they may have taken on the identity and gotten to these points of power, Yeah,
it's absolutely possible that they took over the identity of somebody while they were effectively a nobody and then rose them to power that way. Or maybe they just waited and just, sniped in and took it. They seemingly can take the mannerisms and memories of the people. So through the almost ritual that we saw last week. Mm-hmm. So both ways are conceivable.
Yeah. So Gravik's meeting with them, and he detests them for bowing to men and using the human culture to hide in the shadows. And they're there. He said, we've called this meeting to hold a vote to basically say that whether what you've been doing will be punished or we're going to look the other way. And it comes to the point, Gravik's very upset about this whole thing. He's like, no, we're at war right now. And we've been promised stuff by Fury. He didn't deliver. We're claiming this planet. I'm going to claim this planet for us as our new homeworld. And we get revealed that the Skrull who's playing the UK Prime Minister is in league with him. And they basically hold a vote saying, well, if we are in a war, then we need democracy is not for war. Democracy in war, we need a singular leader. And he is chosen as the war general with one of the members, Shirley, basically going against the vote. And she says before she walks out that they did not become homeless refugees because they were unwilling to wage war. They ended up homeless refugees because they were too willing to wage war.
Yes, and this was the second of 3 conversations that I really really loved in this episode. And it's kind of like a scroll version of the Illuminati, basically. It's like it's your war council. Gravik has now positioned himself, basically enacting these war power protocols or whatever, as like effectively the supreme leader of the Skrull Empire, as however large it is, 1,000,000 strong.
And one of the people asked Gravik, saying, what is he going to do if the Avengers show up? And he says he has a plan for that too. And so this will be the first, and later it'll be the second time the Avengers are basically mentioned in this. About Rhodey says, should we call our friends? In the MCU post Civil War, post Endgame, there are no standing Avengers. This isn't like the comics where they break up and they only come together when they're needed. In the comics, the Avengers exist together. They are a team. Yeah, they have little side missions where they have their little solo series and things like that. But the Avengers are a standing team. It has been very rare where we don't have a standing Avengers team in the 616 comics. In the MCU, it's very different.
Yeah, in the comic books, it basically never happens for more than a few months, because that would be the time of the end of one Avengers run and the beginning of a new Avengers run. Pun fully intended there. In the movies, in the TV shows on Disney Plus, Spider-Man Far From Home was asked in Spider-Man 1, the reporters asked him something like, "Are you the leader of the Avengers now? Are you the new Iron Man?" And I mean, we don't have an answer to that, right? Like, we don't have an answer. We've never seen a formal disbandment of the Avengers. So one could assume that, yes, Spider-Man is still an Avenger. Tony declared him one. He's an Avenger. Sam is still an Avenger, etc., and go down the line. But we've never seen anything like that. I'm really hoping to get something along those lines, answering that, probably in Brave New World. But regardless, today, there's no really, they could call individuals, but other than that, there's no one for them to call.
Correct. And, he lets Shirley leave, saying, "Nope, you go in peace. No harm will come to you." And then she later calls Talos to let him know what's happened. And he demands that she arrange a meeting between him and Gravik. He's like, "You're not going to want that. He's going to kill you." And he's like, "No, tell him we're going to discuss my daughter at that point." And so that's as much as we see regarding that. And let's take our first ad break before we kind of get into this, because there's some big hints of the future for this show and the impact of what is actually going on in Skrullos at that point. So, listeners, these ads help keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, nor the amount of repetition these ads do. I cannot stress that enough. And so we're going to give you that 3 count before they come on, because sometimes they can be a little bit loud. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. So, Gravik comes back as the kind of conquering hero, conquering leader to Cheers. They've heard the news that he's their war general. And Gaia then kind of follows him a little bit and follows into a section where there's a lab. And she kind of sneaks in and sees a doctor running experiments with a machine in the background. And doesn't seem to be based on the dialogue that's being had between her and what we later find out is possibly her husband, the samples that are being brought in are either not good, or what Gravik information has been telling them to go find it, they end up empty-handed. The samples aren't there. So then she goes into a conference room and uses a computer to look up the doctor's name, and then starts finding these files of samples they've gotten. One from Groot, which we officially see the name of Groot's home planet in the MCU's Planet X. Mm-hmm. Samples from the Frost Beast that we saw at the end of Thor the Dark World. Cull Obsidian, which must mean the hand that was sliced up from the portal.
Is the Frost Beast the one from the credit scene of Thor the Dark World?
That's what I'm thinking. And then Extremis from Iron Man 3. So in the trailers, I pointed out that there was we haven't seen this yet, a crate from Damage Control that is probably going to house the cut off arm of Cull Obsidian at that point.
And they're mimicking the Fantastic Four here.
Yes, this is what they're doing is they're trying to gain access and experiment in order to splice those with their DNA to get powers. They are creating the MCU's version of the Super Scrolls. We have seen this kind of already in the trailers with Gravik. So we know what's going to be happening. Gravik is going to get at least Groot's power base.
Right. That was in the trailers. That was pretty clear. Groot's power base would provide the Mr. Fantastic, right? Like the stretchiness. Coal Obsidian is probably your strength, like the Thing, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Extremis, I mean, they blow up. They basically catch on fire and blow up, right? In Iron Man 3.
Yep.
Feels like Human Torch to me. Frost Beast is the one that's the biggest leap probably to get to the Invisible Woman.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. It's not a perfect theory, but it feels like that's what they're doing, is that they're mimicking the Fantastic Four, because to this point, they don't have the Fantastic Four yet to actually use.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that is exactly what they're doing. We're gonna get Super Skrulls. That's what they're working towards. That's how they can stand toe to toe with any kind of heroes that may try to challenge them at that point. Gravik does come in there, and Gaia asked Gravik, how did he know that Fury was going to be there? And he kind of brushes it off and saying, well, why wouldn't he be there? But he says his man on the inside's been feeding him information, and he's also told him where their missing man is being held. And they say, come on, we're going to go get him. So the major powers have gathered, and we flash to a news scene in this kind of courtroom area. Major powers have gathered in an emergency meeting to grill Rhodey, where exactly what's been going on. And Rhodey doesn't necessarily have has very little tolerance for what's happening. He's basically taking the Tony Stark kind of idea of what's been going on, and he's when they say, why isn't the president here, and he kind of minds the committee is like, the president's the most powerful man in the nation. He doesn't get called on, he doesn't go to receive every call. I'm here to represent it. And he's questioning the evidence and the photo evidence from Russia. He's like, I'm not going to trust Russian evidence. And so he brushes them off, and he leans over to his back behind the representative behind him, saying, if the representative if Croatia or Slovakia, I can't remember which one, is it Croatia or Slovakia, keeps side-eyeing me, it rolls her eyes one more time, I'm going to carpet bomb their country out of existence.
Got to remind everybody he's the War Machine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to put on the other suit and carpet bomb their country.
Or is he the War Machine?
Or is he War Machine? And so he basically is saying, like, until you give me real evidence at that point, I'm out of here. Yeah, and it was Slovakia that made that comment.
Yes.
So after Rhodey leaves, he gets a call from Fury, and they arrange to meet up for drinks. And Rhodey grills Fury on his actions, and Rhodey reveals that he's known for about the Skrulls for 15 years. And it's probably during this time that he's seen, it wasn't referring to Captain Marvel, it was referring to when Talos behind Fury's back is bringing, like, there are ships that are crash landing that are bringing Skrulls here.
Yeah, and I was this would be my third conversation of this Talking Heads episode that I really enjoyed. And 15 years ago, the show's in roughly 2024 right now, something
no,
like
2028.
That,
2028.
The show's in 2028. What am I missing? Where did it jump that far?
I've just heard that from a couple of sources, so you'd have to check them on that.
Okay. Because I don't think anything's jumped that far ahead, but you know what? Point will still stand. 15 years ago would have put us back to, let's say it's 2028, 2013, right after the Avengers. Because remember, most of this takes place in real time. It's like interesting that Rhodes found out about the Skrulls at that time. I wonder if Tony knew about them. Maybe he didn't. But regardless, I gotta wonder the other side of this: is this actually Rhodes, or does he know about it because he is a Skrull himself? He is acting pretty darn hostile to Fury in a way that I don't know. I don't remember a lot of interactions between these two characters other than like being in the same scene. But
this is the first direct interaction they've had with each other.
It seems pretty hostile, and you kind of get why, but you would think with the history of everything that Fury has with the Avengers in general, that Rhodey would give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Fury reminds him we don't get to higher positions because of who our daddies know. Basically, talking about their skin color, and they're both African Americans, and he says every ounce of power we wrestle from the vice grip of mediocre Alexander Pierces with blood, and Rhodey throws it back in his face and saying, yeah, we didn't just wrestle away power to give it back to mediocre people that have our skin color. At that point, I'm not just going to accept this at blind value. I'm going to represent. And so in Fury says, hey, he's trying to protect the world. Rhodes counters that by saying, the way we protect the planet is protecting the U.S.'s seat at the table. And they're both frustrated with each other at that point. And Rhodey mentions that what about calling in their friends? And Fury shuts that down because he says it's a big risk with the Avengers getting captured and turned into terrorists, and that's why he has to do it himself. And that Rhodey, one of his Rhodey's security, that he says, can you trust him? That's where the Skrull revelation comes in, that the government may be using Skrulls as well, telling him that, oh yeah, we've got a plane for you. You're being recalled, and basically you're being fired. And he's like, what did you get told to fire me? He's like, no, I volunteered for it. You're out of control.
I volunteer. Like that's cold, man. That's just cold.
And his security guy tries to take down Nick Fury, not successfully. And that's when he leans in and delivers the best kind of Nick Fury, Sam Jackson line to Rhodey. He goes, I'm Nick Fury. Even when I'm out, I'm in. Oh, you're muted.
Great Nick Fury line. He's still a badass, but he then goes to, he basically leaves, and you see him, and you get one of those little panic attacks again, one of those little panic, like looks of panic in his eyes and in his mannerisms. So yeah, he was putting on a good front for, Rhodey the Skrull, but is he really in? I don't know. He's trying though.
All right, I stand corrected. You are right. David says November 4th, 2025 is episode 1.
Yes, he does. I actually asked him to let me know where it says that, because when I first pulled it up, I just pulled it up to look. It just said Moscow. So I'm sure somewhere in there's a newspaper or something that he saw that I missed. But he'll get back to me eventually.
Then we cut to Sonia Fallsworth is back. Olivia Colman going into a butcher shop that apparently was locked. And the butcher's guy, how did you get in here? It's like, oh, I get in. And she said, take me back to what's going on. And the Russians are trying to get information from the Skrull bomber. And she says, nope, take this call. This is for you. And whoever's on the other end of it, which I would love to know, basically tells them to get out of there. Sonia's now in charge. And they say, he hasn't told us anything. You're not going to get anything. Because I can be kind of persuasive. And then she asks where the escape hatch is. And they ask why. And he's like, just a hunch, I might need it. And then she basically blockades the room after they leave. And absolutely, I mean, it's gonna sound weird at this point, but I absolutely love her demeanor and how Olivia Colman carries herself in this entire sequence. She is so perfect for this part.
Oh, she's fantastic, and I just love when they're like, the door's locked, and she's like, I'm in here. So what do you think that means? Yes, she is fantastic. For the record, David got back to me. Basically, he saw an article with somebody doing the math based on when Unity Day is in Russia, and just doing the math on other events that would put it in the 2025 place.
Fair. I'm glad we got that confirmation.
Yes, thank you, David. So Fallsworth, she is a character that I am very intrigued by. I want to see more of her character. And, thankfully, it looks like we're going to get more of her character as the show progresses. And right now, like today, yes, because she's in the show, I question, is she a Skrull or not? You have to ask that question of every single character, even though I don't think she is, especially considering who she, like, I don't think she is, but maybe she is. But I like her, and I'd like her to stick around beyond this show, ideally.
Yeah. She gives the two choices, and either the hard way or the easy way. And he responds by saying he will crush her and break all her bones, meaning it's like, all right, the other way. So she takes a pair of pruning scissors and cuts off his finger, which immediately turns back into Skrull. It's like, all right, now that we've got that settled, she gets a syringe full of a blue liquid. I'm gonna to put it out there that the blue liquid is not just any blue liquid. That's Kree blood, which doesn't react too well to Skrull blood.
It's either that or it's one other blue liquid that does have history in the MCU. But being as how what this show is about, I think you're probably right. But we just have to acknowledge Super Soldier Serum is also blue liquid. When
That is true. That is true too. But I don't think they'd take the risk of injecting Super Soldier Serum like that just to see what would happen.
I don't know, but regardless, it is probably Kree blood. Like that is definitely like your top contender for what it is.
Yeah. So to make his blood boil up to 160 degrees to make him talk, he eventually reveals that the scientists that are trying to make them stronger are named the Daltons. They're a husband and wife scientist, and he eventually gives up their safe house. And at that time, Gravik and Gaia show up and go in there and take out all the Russians. It's man, they no. So takes them all down, including Gravik eventually lifts someone up and hooks them in the back with the hanging meat hook. I mean,
right.
It's an intense scene. They're able to rescue their captured guy as Sonya leaves, and they question before they start bringing him out. Gravik says, "What did you tell him?" He's like, "Nothing." He doesn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it for a second. And no, at that point. And so as they eventually leave and they try to go to the safe house, they see police all over the safe house. And he's like, and the guy in the back said, "How did they know?" And Gravik's like, looks back, it's like, "You're an idiot. Of course he said something." So we're gonna go we're gonna put the guy out to pasture. Come along, Lassie, come home at that point, and bang.
You come along, Lassie. Jeez. I mean, you're not wrong.
And that's basically what they do. They shoot him, and that's when Gaia sees at that moment how much danger she is really in as she's possibly being this double agent for her dad.
Yeah, whereas last week I was questioning, is she playing her dad or is Gravik playing her? This week moves me pretty firmly in the direction of Gravik played her.
Yeah. So then we cut to Fury going into the storage place to get a car and drive to a house where we cut inside before he comes in, and it's a Skrull cutting up some food, and Fury enters with a key, doesn't break in, and when he walks in the kitchen, the Skrull is no longer a Skrull, but a human, and she reminds Fury that he forgot something, goes to a bowl, grabs a ring, puts it on his finger, and they kiss and hug. Ladies and gentlemen, let us introduce Mrs. Fury.
Just ridiculous. Like, when? And why isn't he on?
This is Priscilla Fury.
Why isn't she hiding on a farm like Hawkeye's wife was?
Well, it's kind of out in the middle of the nowhere at that point, you know? There's been a lot of talk in the sense of, like, does Fury know he married a Skrull, things like that. In the script, the directors and scriptwriters have come out and said in the script, it does say that Fury does know his wife. Obviously, he knows his wife is a Skrull.
Yeah, I'd be a little surprised if he didn't. I mean, again, he's Fury.
But then the counter with that, why didn't you make it more obvious? They said, we kind of liked it that it was left a little ambiguous for the watchers to see. Because, again, there's going to be another episode. We're going to see a kind of tag to this at that point. But I agree. It was a cool kind of misdirect, but I was like, no, because when she came in, she is the same Skrull that brought Gravik to him. So they greeted each other with the head bow, head against head thing. So there has been a prior relationship with this. How long did this start? How long? Like, she knows basically what Fury does, and it's been possibly years since they've seen each other, maybe. And much like a Life of a Spy, it's very hard to do that in a marriage, but obviously leaves the ring behind so that way no one knows that Fury has someone that it can get to.
Right, which is smart on his part. Same reason that Hawkeye's family was hidden as well, so nobody would go after them to get to Hawkeye. Fury doesn't want anyone going after his wife, let alone finding out she's a Skrull, I assume. So he hides the relationship.
And it's they were basically setting this up like, where he was going. We knew from the trailers. I had pointed out that that's probably going to be his wife. Rumor is that was going to be the wife in the trailer. So now we've got it confirmed, and it's going to be very interesting to see kind of how this. We're probably going to give you a few flashbacks of that maybe next week of finding out why. But man, this series is, like I said, if it keeps going with the way these two episodes are, it's this is gonna challenge a few of my rankings of where I put this. Hit the button.
It is going to challenge some rankings, and I've been wondering at what point are we going to end up just splitting our rankings between the Disney Plus shows and the movies, the theatrical release movies. But for now, yes, it will be slotted in there. 2 episodes in, it's a really, really great start.
Yeah, definitely a great. It's going to be lots. I'm looking forward to next week. But yeah, so we will, as always, we will cover the next episode when it comes up next week. But we're going to take our final ad break of the evening before we get into our one big news story of the week. So listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud. Give you that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right, so this was a very, very, very light week of news, and this news story kind of came at the end of last week when we got an article, basically an expose from thevulture.com, and the article is entitled Spider-Verse Artists Say Working on Sequel Was, quote, Death by 1,000 Paper Cuts. So that's the title of the article. So according to people who worked on the sequel Across the Spider-Verse, it's because the working conditions required to produce the artistry are not so sustainable. Multiple crew members, ranging from artists to production executives who have anywhere from 5 to a dozen years of history in the animation business, describe the process of making the $150 million project arduous, involving relentless kinds of revisionism, and compelled approximately 100 artists to flee the movie before its completion. They spoke to four main people, went on the record, but gave under pseudonyms of varying different degrees in the industry where they came from. While frequent major overhauls, they gave a lot of talk about the overhauls, the sprint to finish the movie in 3 years, a period where the franticness they attribute to Lord's management style, in particular his seemingly inability to conceptualize 3D animation during the early planning stages, and preference to edit fully rendered work instead. Frequent major overhauls are standard operating procedure in animation. However, Pixar films, they say they take 4 to 7 years to plot, animate, and render. At least 4 years, typically 7 years per project. Those changes typically occur early on in the development storyboarding, but in Spider-Verse 2, the crew members say they were asked to make alterations to already approved animation sequences that created backlog work across multiple late-stage departments. The 4 crew members said that they were hired in the spring of 2021 and sat idle for 3 to 6 months that year while Phil Lord tinkered with the movie in layout stages when the first 3D representations were created on storyboard. As a result, those individuals say that they were pushed to work for more than 11 hours a day, 7 days a week for more than a year to make up the time lost, and forced to go back to the drawing board as many as 5 times to revise the work of the rendering of the final stages. The directors, whenever the 3 directors, whenever they sent notes, if Phil Lord sent a note countering that, they were ordered to go with Phil's word over the directors. Chris Miller was apparently very non-existent in the production until the end, the last few months of production. Obviously, Sony's executives said that this is not how they understand Phil Lord and Chris Miller ran it at that point. But I'll tell you what.
What else are they going to say?
Yeah, what else are they going to say? But I'll tell you right now, and again, we don't have the full quote, but this was the quote they used from Amy Pascal. And we all know Amy Pascal when it comes to Spider-Man. She said, one of the things about animation that makes it such a wonderful thing to work on is that you get to keep going back until you get the story right. If the story isn't right, you have to keep going until it is. And to the workers who feel demoralized by having to revise final renders 5 times in a row, I guess, welcome to the movies.
Good
now,
Lord.
Is she wrong? No, she is not wrong about the process. However, it rings very tone deaf. And I had shared this with a mutual friend of ours, who I'm not going to mention on the show, but when I shared this with this individual, I agreed. They're this individuals in the kind of the industry saying very cringeworthy, but it's hard to disagree with what she's saying. It is the process.
It's the process, but it's super tone deaf. She
Yeah.
definitely needed a little bit of a PR spin on that statement.
Oh yeah, no, this is just like here's the hole. You've already dug yourself a hole and you're just digging like it just completely just like at least the Sony executive before her had a better statement, expected statement of denying everything at that point, but it didn't come off as ugh, that's pretty bad. But the Sony Animation Studio is not a union studio, so these workers aren't protected.
Right. And that sucks. I mean, let's be real. But in general, this is the same story we heard about the VFX for Quantum Mania or Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Guardians of the Galaxy, whatever, from Marvel Studios. And it's the same thing we're hearing from other studios as well. The people doing this work, the VFX work, the animators, they're overworked and they're underpaid. And just because you give more financial money doesn't always make it worth it. If they were truly having to work anywhere close to 11-hour days, 7 days a week, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. It's not worth it at that point. People have got to have actual lives outside of work, and that's just there's just no excuse for that makes that okay.
Yeah, it's exactly. So again, it's just like Sony has not officially come out and said they're delaying Beyond the Spider-Verse from their March release next year. We've said it before. Haley Steinfeld's gone on the record that Haley Steinfeld has said she has not filmed any audio for it at the time of the release of the second movie. I think we're all expecting at this point that there will be a delay at that point. And you know what? Again, to avoid this happening, I think, again, how long did it take between this one? 3 to 4 years?
I think it was more like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
it was a long time.
So do I think it needs to be 4 or 5 years? Not necessarily, but if it needs to be that long in order to treat the workers right, to get the product right, to get the timing right, we know people are going to come and see this at that point. So pay the workers, treat them right, take the time you need. Don't fall into the trap of we have a deadline to meet. The projects change. We are used to it. And especially if the actors go on strike, well, yeah, we know that they won't be recording dialogue anytime soon.
Right. Exactly. Completely agree. Just delay the movie. Give them the time they need. You know what? The movie will probably come out better if your people are not having to work 11-hour days, 7 days a week.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like I said, light news week. That's the only main story we're talking about tonight. So let us get into some listener feedback this week. So as always, Brent, you put out the Spidey signal. What questions we got this week?
Well, we got a couple fact or fictions and then a true question, as well as one question we'll talk about with post credit. So the one that's just a straight up question, Mari Daniels, if we get more Moon Knight, would you like it to be another season or a feature-length film? Personally, I think some of the visuals easily justify making a Moon Knight movie, especially those scenes in the desert.
Would I like to see a full-length movie? Yes. Do I think we're going to get one? No. I think we'll get a second season. I don't think, and we all know there's a segment of the general audience that just doesn't watch the shows in Disney Plus, even though they might have it. It's just not for them. They're straight movies at that point. Moon Knight did not become the like, oh, you gotta watch it kind of. I mean, admittedly, even though you and I really liked it at that point,
you're right.
It did not hit kind of like WandaVision hit or Loki hit, or it just didn't have that kind of zeitgeist to it. So I would like to see this film. However, I think you're talking, Amari, you definitely talk about like the visuals from a cinematography standpoint in the desert would look really good, but it's not a flashy kind of movie in that way. Moon Knight's never been that kind of flashy character. Yeah. Now you get into kind of the recently with him trying to take down the Avengers a year or so ago in the comics, that could be kind of something there, but we're not even close to that Moon Knight yet. So again, I'm thinking we're going to get another season sooner than we get a movie. Could we see Moon Knight in a movie? Yes. A Moon Knight solo project? probably not anytime soon, if ever.
Yeah, I could pretty much co-sign that. Now, would I like to see him in a Moon Knight movie? Yes and no. And basically, my answer to that is, does Oscar Isaac want to do a movie, or is he willing to commit to a TV show? Because I like the long form storytelling you can do in a TV show that you don't do in a movie. Yes, so much of the MCU is able to tap into that because of the serialized nature of these products. But I guess give me my preference, and I would say I will take the show first and a movie second. But I really enjoyed the show. I'll take it either way. Just give me the movie, give me the TV show, whatever. Give me a special presentation on Disney Plus if that's what it needs to be. But give me more Moon Knight.
Yeah. So, all right. So you said the rest of them were fact or fiction. So let's transition to fact or fictions at that point. So let me pull up the ones from last week. All right, fact or fiction number 1. Michael Keaton's Vulture will appear in Kraven. 37% said fact, 63% said fiction. 2, Kraven will say something about it or allude to Venom being his next great hunt. 78% said fact, 22% said fiction. Number 3, Deadpool 3 will have a fastball special with Colossus Wolverine. 75% said fact, 25% said fiction. And finally, Morbius will still outperform Kraven at the end of its box office run. This was closer than I would have thought. 53% said fact, 47% said fiction. All right. So this week for my fact or fictions, first one. In Beyond the Spider-Verse, we will see one of the original Spider variants die. So the 5-1 Spider-Ham, Spider-Man Noir, Penny Parker, Spider-Gwen, or Peter B. Parker will die in the Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Why would you say such a thing?
I didn't say I like it.
Why would you even put this out there in the world? What happened to you?
Hey, I've got to come up with questions. Come on.
You do. I think the answer is fiction, but man, if that were to happen, that would just be crushing. I mean, sure, we got Penny Parker's robot in the first movie, but even that was sad enough.
She was able to rebuild the robot, so
I don't like this. I'm going fiction, but mainly because the heart does not want this.
Yeah, I'm with you. The heart definitely doesn't want to see it happen at that point. Definitely, any of them, but yeah, Peter B. Parker, Spider-Gwen, all of them. I don't want any of them, but those two, yeah, they gotta continue on. All right, so next one. If the WGA strike ends by the end of the summer, if it doesn't end, if the WGA strike doesn't end by the end of the summer, and the potential SGA strike, okay, third time's a charm. Let me do this again. All right, correction. If the WGA strike ends by the end of the summer, and the potential SGA strike, Screen Actors Guild strike, SAG strike, is avoided, Marvel Studios will host their own event before the end of this year to make announcements of casting in new projects.
So if by the end of the summer there are no guild strikes happening,
all guild strikes are over or avoided,
Marvel Studios is going to have their own event. I love the idea. I just hope they would live stream it. Do their own Apple keynote, if you will. There's the Phase 3 announcements of El Capitan that they did. Do something like that. But man, even if it's just on Disney Plus, record that thing, post it, stream it. Yes, please. I love the idea. I'm going to say fact. I'm going to say fact, but I'm just trying to will this one to happen.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm a fact on that one. I want to will it to happen. Again, pay the writers, get the Screen Actors Guilds on board, and everything like that. Let's bring this to a close. But again, if they're not going to come to the table, then so be it. And finally, fact or fiction number 3: in Deadpool 3, we will see variants of Deadpool and Wolverine.
Fact. No qualifiers. Fact. I think that's happening.
Yeah, I think it's happening as well. So, all right, I will post those in addition to our other 2 ones that were submitted by listeners.
Yeah, from Jim Scroggs, Spider-Man from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 will be in Beyond the Spider-Verse. Did you play the Tony Hawk games?
I probably dabbled in them once or twice, but I was definitely not. I know enough about him. I did not realize Spider-Man was in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2.
He was. I did way more than dabble. There was a room in my house that my friends referred to as the Hawk Room. and we played it so much in that room. And we played other games too, sure, but like my house was the hangout spot for my group of friends in high school. Basically, it was always my house, and probably because they could put things on my mom's grocery list and she would buy it. But regardless, yes, like I love the idea of this. I want to will this into existence. Show me Spider-Man on a skateboard. I'm gonna say fact.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those where I could see it being a very quick Easter egg, blink and you miss it, but it's there. Yeah, sure, I'm there for it.
All right, David. We will find out who purchased Avengers Towers in the next phase of the MCU, which I guess would be phase 6. So effectively by phase 6, we're going to know who purchased Avengers Tower.
I say we're going to find out in this phase.
You think in this phase?
I think we're finding it in this phase.
One, I'm going to say it's a fact. We're going to find out. So, yes, I accept the premise that David has presented us. Yes. Okay. Do you think it's the Fantastic Four? Do you think it's Kingpin? Who do you think?
I think it's Mephisto.
You think it's Mephisto? Good. It all comes back to Mephisto.
I think it's Mephisto, and I think it's going to be very sooner than you realize that it's going to be there.
You know what? I'm here for the jokes. I'm here for the memes. Let's make it Mephisto.
It's finally going to happen. Mephisto. When that finally happens, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to come up with a huge, like, if we can get, like, think Mephisto is officially confirmed.
I'm here for it. Let's do it.
Yep. So, all right, well, we'll post all those, drop them on Sunday. Let your voices be heard at that point. So, comic book club. So, we don't have a new one this week because, again, we're in the middle of a vote. And we told y'all last week that the theme for this comic book club that you guys get to vote on is villains. So, you all chose from 4 options. The 4 options were Doctor Doom, Kang the Conqueror, Apocalypse, and Green Goblin. So out of those choices, whoever won, we would let you select from there 4 arcs from that one villain. And the winner by a large margin, by 20%, was Doctor Doom. With 48% of the vote, Kang the Conqueror got 28%, Apocalypse 15%, and sorry, Green Goblin 9%. Despite all that work that you did, you're out, Norman. You're out.
You're out.
So,
and can I just say, I would love to know what people think of the double vote idea. Pick the character, pick the story arc, because I like it a lot. But I'm just curious what people think about it.
Yeah, let us know. All right, so when I kind of saw that Doctor Doom was going to be very much in the lead, I started looking ahead and trying to figure out some of the kind of quote-unquote best stories for Doctor Doom. So the first one is Fantastic Four Unthinkable from 2003. This is issue 67 through 70 and issue 500. Doctor Doom, the greatest villain of the Marvel Universe has ever known, and the most personal and persistent nemesis the Fantastic Four has ever encountered, rises again. But this time, something is different about the Lord of Latveria, and his strategy strikes at the heart of the first family of superheroes, forcing Reed Richards to contemplate doing the unthinkable. And this is during Mark Waid's run. The next one are the Books of Doom, 2005, 6 issues, from the Black Steppes of Eastern Europe to the college campuses of New York City, and finally, The Throne of Latveria. This is the life of Von Doom, from his earliest disasters to his scientific triumphs to the tragedy of the fractured man he would become. This is the story you know and the one you don't. And the third choice, Doom War, Black Panther 2009, issues 10 through 12, and Doom War 1 through 6. Wakanda has been conquered, its vibranium reserves plundered. Storm faces execution in the next 48 hours, and Doctor Doom stands triumphant. It will take a combined force of the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and the 2 Black Panthers to stand against him. A war has begun that will pit the world's most relentless supervillain against the collection of the world's most powerful superheroes. One that will span the globe, offering twists and turns and surprise players, hello Deadpool, that neither side will see coming. And finally, Infamous Iron Man, 2016 to 2017, 12 issues. There's a new Iron Man in town, and his name is Victor Von Doom. The Marvel Universe's greatest villain is no stranger to the armor, but now he's trying something new on for size, heroism. And where Tony Stark failed, Doom will succeed. What is Victor's master plan? That's what a great number of folks want to know, including Ben Grimm, Pepper Potts, and the other Iron Man, Riri Williams. In his heroic quest, Doom faces a cosmic-level adversary and his most mortal enemy, whom he thought would never see again. But what is the shocking truth behind Victor's reincarnated mother? So those are our 4 choices that we're going to put out there on Sunday afternoon.
You don't have to say which, but do you have a preference?
I actually don't. I really honestly don't. I could go any one of these. I'd be happy to do.
I think I do have a preference among. I think I basically have a first choice and second choice, and then I'm good either way. Really, I'm good with all 4 of them because we talked about it ahead of time. But if I wasn't, I would have told you then. But I do have a preference, but I'll keep that to myself. I don't want to influence the vote for or against the one I'm rooting for.
So there will be a 2-week break at that point. So this week and then next week when we reveal the winner at that point. So in a couple of weeks, we will be whoever the winner is. We will start reading that. So let your voices be heard on that. And that is volume 170, ladies and gentlemen. So, Brent, why don't you tell people how they can follow you?
Brentech Prime on Twitter. Go to brentech.social for links to the other social media accounts that I'm on, including now Blue Sky. I got an invite code to that, much to the jealousy of some other people that we run in circles with. But I am technically on there as well. So there's links to that again at brentech.social.
Yes, and you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Balga. You can follow this show on Twitter at Marvel 8 Podcast. You can follow my other show, World's Finest True Believers, at gmail.com. We just dropped a new episode this week with our buddy Scott from DC Squadcast, looking at one of his favorite stories, characters at that point, the Rocketeer. So give it a good listen at that point. Hope you enjoy that. You can email the show at Marvel Alliance Podcast at gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at UAPod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, ask questions for us to answer on the show. And continue to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasters of choice. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us live in the chat. Stay safe out there, everyone. Thank you all for listening. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent, listener question for our post discussion. What is it?
Yeah, from DC Outlaw. What do you think the long-term effects that Secret Invasion could have on the MCU? And how do you think the show will be remembered by fans outside the AI intro debacle?
I think the long-term effects are going to be pretty huge, especially if some of my predictions come true. And I think there's a reason why they retitled Captain America 4 to Brave New World. I think that movie is going to have some major effects, especially with the rise of Thunderbird Ross to the presidency, of saying, like, it's not just who can you trust. It's like you can't even trust whoever's around you. And he's going to represent that kind of fear-mongering.
I'll admit I find this a hard question to answer. We're only a third of the way through the show, but the AI thing, I think it's going to become a footnote. Like over time, I think it's a footnote in the history of the show. I stand by everything I said last week regarding that, but it's a footnote in the show. The long-term effects of the story itself, if these 2 episodes are anything to go by, I think it's going to be looked at fondly in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are going to look at it with quite a bit of reverence, maybe not as high as some other projects like your Captain America, the Winter Soldier, but, up there towards the upper echelon of most people's rankings would be my guess. And at this point, that would be like the top 15 to 20 projects even, because there's so many different things. As far as the direct effects on the MCU itself, I think that depends on who else is revealed to be a Skrull.
Yes.
Like, is Rhodes a Skrull? How long has he been a Skrull? Ross was a Skrull. How long was he? Like, we need to answer some of those questions, but the farther back it goes, the more the effects are going to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, but yeah, we'll have to see on that one. And just a quick little asset, I was able to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. And I will just say that there are moments where I was smiling. There were moments where I really was shocked and had a little tear in my eye. And definitely at one point in this movie, they do jump the shark in the series, but I'm there for it. And how it ends, it is a perfect ending for, what they're trying to do with the character. I still think Last Crusade was where they should have ended it, but I will, accept another movie. And as I said on Twitter, thank you, Harrison Ford. Thank you, Steven Spielberg. Thank you, James Mangold, for bringing us, a character that has been a huge impact on my life. And I can definitely say, if you're an Indiana Jones fan, go see this movie.
I'm glad you liked it. I know how much you were looking forward to this one, so I'm glad it held up. And I'm certainly not going to. I like the Fast and Furious. I'm not about to question jumping the shark. So,
yes. But all right, we will see you all next week. Take care.